So how many of you have signed a contract in here other than, and are those of you looking maybe for the next contract, the permanent one, or are you still on the initial one? So you're good, okay. How many hope to sign a contract in the next couple years? Good, 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 okay. So, show me the money. Contract, I have nothing to disclose and no money to disclose there. My qualifications is mostly I've signed bad contracts in the prior one. And I've gotten better at it. I've learned from my mistakes. And as a program director, I've gotten to help my residents sign contracts. Unlike many programs, about half of my graduates go directly into practice, so I see their contracts. I keep their contracts. In fact, if you would like to send me your contract, I would love to have it. And by the way, you can black out the money on it. I'm really not interested very much in the amount that you're getting paid. I'm more interested in the language of it. I've worked both in private practice and with what truly is private practice, where I was an owner. I've been an employed physician probably for majority of my career, so I've seen it from both sides. And like I said, most of mine, though, more recently has been seeing residents' contracts and people that have also sent me their contracts for other reasons. So here's the goals. Look at the forces that are shaping, pushing behind the contract. Looking at what is a fair contract, and that's different than what's, quote, a good contract, because that's seemingly a one-sided idea. A fair contract looks at both sides. Talk about what's going to be the individual items in a contract, and so that you'll see them and recognize them and not be worried about them. And the final part that a lot of people don't know, you actually should negotiate on your contract. You shouldn't take what you're handed most of the time. So first of all, show me the money. Is that what this talk is about? Does anybody think? How many people, that's the big item when you're thinking about your contract? Show me the money. Okay. It really is not important as you think. You'll get paid. We get paid actually pretty well if you think about it in terms of most of the population. But here's this is a slide I use. Most of my slides I remade, but this one I used because I liked. It'll tell you how you're going to behave, and your contract will determine how, if you leave your job or if you stay. So the first one, if you're not happy, your family's not happy, you're not going to last. You may last for a couple years. The second part, I always say cheated, and I would say failed expectations. And this isn't, again, if you're paid, you may be paid worse in a job that you're happy in, but you don't feel like you were lied to, you don't feel like you're taken advantage of. That's hard for most people to go to work and continue to work for somebody and be successful if they feel like their needs have not been met or they have somehow been along the way led down a road that they don't want to be. And if within your job you are not doing what you want, you won't stay with it. If I had to do wound care, I really couldn't do that. There's some people that is perfectly fine, but if my contract said 50% wound care, I wouldn't do it. Real purpose of the contract is twofold. It's to protect both you and your employer. I was having this discussion just a half hour ago with one of my graduates about her next contract, and she was talking about a lot what she wanted, and I told her why I wouldn't give her that contract if I was her employer, because it was too one-sided. Good contracts should not be one-sided. They should favor both sides. And it's going to establish what is fair for both parties, not just for them, not just for you. Here's a perspective from an employer. And David, your chair is probably looking at this, or you're saying, a new grad, I'm talking mostly about a new grad, we're going to lose money on you. We're going to pay you more money than you will collect. I don't care how well you're trained, where you're coming from, you just are not going to be as efficient as somebody who's been in practice for 5 or 10 years when you finally get to hit your stride. So you're an investment in the future. We also know, which we didn't know when I came out, is people need mentoring. They need guidance on how to make these steps and not allowed to flounder on their own. And so they are investing in you and hopefully bringing you along. And at the end of this, at 3, 4 years, maybe sooner, I hope you're worth it. That's really what I want as an employer. So the contracts are going to reflect that and protect them, hopefully, in addition to paying you. Okay, so what's in a contract? This is sort of the nitty-gritty of it. How exactly are you paid? Salary versus production. How do you measure production, which is another whole topic. The things like signing bonus that everybody gets hung up on, loan forgiveness. Loan forgiveness is a big one. The other ones, not so much. Insurance, both medical insurance for you and your family and malpractice insurance. Tail coverage. Does everybody know tail coverage? You need to know what tail coverage is. One hand. Occurrence, and basically that means that if I'm employed for a 6-year period, if I need tail coverage if it wasn't covered. In other words, if it was reported after I left, and it becomes expensive. After leaving for 6 years, I paid $50,000, and that was in a good state. Vacation, CME, and probably bigger than anything, what's your call schedule be like? Because that'll probably affect whether your spouse really likes you anymore. Things that are scary in there, things that they can fire you for, and non-compete clauses. And finally, a lot of this is this your initial contract or is this your long-term contract? So I'm going to go into each one of these. There are pure versions out there. I met the chair at Ochsner, and for his transplant surgeons, they're paid straight salary. There's no production, and that works for them. But that is a relatively unusual model anymore. On the other hand, private practice, or called eat what you kill, is a purely production and based on collections, only money that comes into me. Finally, but let's put it a different way. And this was my first practice. I did 4 gallbladders. My partner did 1 gallbladder. His had nice commercial insurance. None of mine had any insurance. I got paid nothing, and he got paid fairly well. Who did more work? If you do it on collections, he did more work. If you do it on RVUs, I did more work. So you need to know how you're being measured by those people who are paying you. And I often think these are usually a mixed model. So they start out with a salary, and then if you exceed whatever mark, then they pay you based on collections or RVUs. And you can often get back to where the salary is and the expected RVUs you're supposed to produce, and that usually gets pretty close to your salary. The throw-ins, which I call, they will give you $10,000 as a signing bonus and $5,000 for moving expenses. These are all interchangeable for them. So if you're not moving, you're staying in the same city, you ask, say, I don't want a moving expense, just increase my, my signing bonus. Or maybe you want a cash advancement. Don't spend a lot of time on these. They're always there. They're interchangeable, but they're not going to expand. So they probably have a number in mind, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, and however you want to arrange it, they'll give it to you, but they're not going to give you a lot more. The only item on this that matters is probably loan forgiveness. You will have to go to a rural place, stay a certain amount of time, and it's probably going to be financed from outside it, but this could mean $300,000, $400,000. I can't see that happens very often, but that's about the one throw-in that I would really want to know about. And some people have even gone and worked somewhere for 3 years to get their loans paid off. Next one. Okay, the one that people overlook, the non-salary benefits, because they don't have a number beside them. So your malpractice insurance, and if they're paying for occurrences or claims made, there's value in that. Your retirement, there's value in that. And I think a lot of people, when they look at private practice salaries, they say they look higher. Well, the thing is, in private practice, you pay for them yourself. So when I was in private practice, I financed my own retirement. That came out of my expenses. What else? My malpractice, my family's medical insurance. So those anymore for most employment contracts are part of it, and you need to figure those in. You look at them as a version of salary because they really do have monetary benefits. Time off, how do they count it? Do they count weekends or just weekdays? Are CME days different? Can you move between the two of them? And the other big one is call. Okay, so How is it distributed? Are you paid for it? Generally, you aren't paid for it unless you do a certain amount. Is it worth it? How bad is call? Is call 3 calls in the night and you just answer the phone? Are you up all night? Very important things that will affect your life as much as the money. Non-compete clauses. So these matter if you leave employment and want to stay in the same area. So your family is from Baltimore and you take a job in Baltimore and you want to stay. That's a problem if you have a non-compete clause. If you're leaving Baltimore, it probably isn't. Now, they write these in different ways. It's always described as a geographic radius, something like 15 miles on some point, but that point may be this larger area if they describe as any place they have an office, and if you join somebody who has 5 offices separated by, say, 30 miles, you can see how that 15-mile radius grows to something more like 100 miles, and that's a big thing. You're going to have to leave the area to continue to practice. Some of them will let you buy it out, some of them won't. In some states, it's not enforceable. So if I was going to a city that that's where I was going to be, I have to be there because my parents or whatever reason, I would know about the law there. If I said, if I don't like Baltimore, I'm going somewhere else, I really wouldn't worry about it a lot. They usually have a length of time, 1 to 2 years. And I've seen people move away, practice somewhere else for a while, and then come back because of non-competes. So the other big thing you need to know is that contract in front of you, is it the one that is going to be your contract forever, or is it 1 to 2 years? It used to be that they had a salary guarantee, and after it, they expect you generally to earn what you're being paid. And it seems more recently, the ones I've seen, the initial salary is actually quite good, and something around, I've seen a number of them around $300,000. But I don't think that they're going to be able, they only run for a year, and I don't think that there's enough business for that person the next year. They're going to take a salary cut because they may only be able to earn half that in terms of production. You need to know that going forward. Is that necessarily a bad deal? Maybe not. And I'll go to the last part of the slide. What's the viability of the long-term contract? In other words, how busy do they need you to be? If you're going to come in and you're pretty obvious you're going to be busy right off the bat, it's not as big a deal. If they're expanding from 4 to 5 surgeons, they need probably 4.5 surgeons for a while. So you may not get as busy nearly as fast. I always talk about this, and sometimes I'll see people sign the initial contract or be very happy with the initial contract, and they don't even see the long-term contract. And you sometimes have to renegotiate that at that time, but I would want to know what my long-term contract was before I moved me and my family there, because there is sort of this tendency to be stuck one place and not be able to move about. You can move, but that costs money, your kids are uprooted, so you tend to want to stay where you're going to be when you start. Here's the other thing that a lot of people figure. They're sent the contract, and they figure it's set in stone. It isn't. Now, there are some things that are going to be negotiable on there, and there's some are not. How do you tell? You ask. Some things are obvious. So at Carilion Clinic, my contract looks like the cardiologist and the family practice person. They're exactly the same structure, meaning I start out with a base, and then once I make the number that I need to, then I go and get paid on an RVU basis. They're not going to write a different contract for anyone else if they've done this for 1,000 people. But they will negotiate on a salary and how much they're going to pay for RVU. Well, that's not true. Within the RVUs, that's going to be set within a department, so I can't negotiate out these things. But I will tell you there are also people who write really bad contracts from their standpoint. Resident of mine who was given a contract that said they counted the number of clinic days, clinic appointments. Now, mind you, we get paid nothing for a follow-up visit, and I can generate umpteen million clinic visits by seeing my patient every week for the next month, right? Not smart because it doesn't generate any money, but that was how that contract was written, rather than on something that made more sense, like actually something that generates money. Seek support, and most people will talk about getting a lawyer to review a contract. I have problems with that because they can tell you the legality of it. If I was trying to leave a place that I had a non-compete and wanted to stay, yes, I'd have a lawyer. If I was really worried about some of the things that are enforceable, I would. What they can't read between the lines is saying, this is what they expect, this is what your life will initially be like, this is what you can expect. Most people who have done this for a while can look at a contract and get pretty quickly, and with other questions, the read between the lines. How busy will I be? What will I be doing? Will I be doing a lot of call? Will I be doing, or will my office be full of new consults with cases that I really want to do? And the negotiations will actually often give you insight to how flexible they are, how inflexible, whether you really want to work with these people for the next several years. So remember, if you bring a unique skill, so you're the first bariatric surgeon and they want to establish a bariatric practice, that's going to increase it. Try to understand the assumptions they're making in where they're trying to get to your salary. And some of the employers really haven't thought this over very well. And you need to read and understand your own contract. If somebody needs to help you, that's great. But you need to read and understand your entire contract and what it makes. And you may get done and realize that that first page said nothing as important to you, but as long as you understand that. Final thoughts, you'll be okay. Even if you sign a bad contract, it's not the end of the world. Be realistic. That's my biggest problem that I've seen with residents is going into practice is what they expect is the sky and the moon, and they're just not worth that much right off the bat. They will be, but in terms of what money they're generating, they're not necessarily realistic. Look at the longer term picture. Realize that you're not a finished product and you will get better. Use the process to learn and once again, read and understand your own contract.